Yeah. Morning, everyone. I'm Andy. Pleased to meet you. So, usually it's the Sunday morning, so we could maybe start with some exercises, or perhaps some yoga. That's always a healthy option. But as I'm from Scotland, usually the tradition is this sort of thing, to be honest. So, but yeah, maybe we'll just save the yoga and the beer for later. So, can everyone hear okay? Cool, okay. So, my name's Andy. I self-employed developer. I work in Aberdeen in Scotland. I just work from an office in a house sort of thing. So, Scotland, Scotland's obviously up here. Aberdeen is here. It's dry, it's cold, it's windy. They have, what do they have? This is Aberdeen. There's a beach, there's a harbour, and it's cold. We've got castles, and we've got beaches, and there's also things like oil rigs and helicopters and whiskey and porridge and shit like that. So, occasionally try and avoid them. So, so I'm a web developer. I've been I've been a developer really since I've writing code since maybe 25 years, I guess, and probably 3/4 of that's probably been web-based stuff, a bit of embedded and Linux driver code too. So I'm PHP, CSS, all these good things, and of course Joomla. Also, I'm not really. They say about like putting yourself out of your comfort zone and stuff, but I'm not really a talker like this, so absolutely terrified. That's okay. And what else? I don't know. Other things you don't put on slides. I don't know. So I'm dyslexic, atheist, feminist, pragmatist, but I can't spell most of those words, so I put them on here. So this is where I work. This is obviously a high-tech corporate HQ. On the outside, it looks like this. We don't have the net curtains anymore, actually. It's just like from Google Street View. You know that bit where instead of walking outside your house and taking a photo of it, you go to Google Street View and you dump the image from Google Street View. So, but actually, it looks like this inside. The helicopter's just down here, and we have piranhas just through here, and I think this is in Sweden. It's a data center. I modelled my office on that. Or maybe it was the other way around. I don't know. Cool. You always do that presentation like that, and then somebody's like, that's cool. And then you feel bad for just finding something on the internet. So I thought, I'm not sure how to do these things, but I thought I'd do this as a story because everyone likes a story. So, it's a story. So I don't know. It might be this sort of story. I never saw that one. I don't know whether it had a happy ending, but maybe not. Or it might be this sort of story, but hopefully not. The best thing mostly is to start at the beginning, I suppose. So in the beginning, there's a guy called Jim. So Jim is a 50-year-old great guy, lives in London. He knows a lot about schools and apps, and he's keen to invest. And so he's, sees an opportunity in the UK because 95% of schools in the UK don't have apps. In the state sector, in the private sector, I think it's the majority now do, which always seems bizarre. So, and there's 24,000 state schools in the UK. Actually, I think that's 24,000 in England only. So that would be plus like Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. And also, also looking at nurseries and clubs and churches, sports clubs, things that have the same analogous community sort of use case, I guess. So yeah. This is Jim. So we decided to make apps, and the main thing is making apps is expensive, so schools can't afford it. So we made lots of apps, lots and lots and lots, and that's like from like a month ago. So there's like maybe half as many again as that. So the idea is produce at scale, keep the price low, so the entry point financially is viable, for the state sector, which is is probably something that's not really been addressed in the UK, really, so far. Yeah. So I thought I'd start with a team, because without people, obviously, there's nothing. So yeah, team. So we have a project manager. It's Angus. So I met Angus at the last Joomla day in the UK. So and I was doing a talk, terrified the same then as now. And then afterwards he was like, I've got this project. And I was like, so that's good. So it's a good example, a good advert for doing talks at Joomla events, if you needed one anyway. But, so there's Angus. He's like a 50-year-old guy. He's formerly like Oracle, Microsoft experienced product manager. And then I have Bronwyn. He's an app developer with a UI and web background. And then Paul, he's Bronwyn's maybe 35. And Paul, he's also an app developer. He's a more general app developer, but also with a strong focus on continuous integration and continuous delivery. And that's me, the web developer there. And there's the boss, the MD, and they just hired a sales person too. But everyone, by startup levels, everyone is kind of old and experienced, I guess, which is nice, So everyone works remotely, which is most of the people are based in London or roundabouts. Obviously, I'm a bit further away, and it works fine. We have like weekly ticket reviews, and does anyone use Assembler? It's like a collaboration software that does tickets, wiki, Git repositories, and everything's kind of integrated. It's quite nice. We have a bit of downtime sometimes, which is we have monthly meetings in person mostly, and usually we go for like 2 or 3 week code sprints. So there'll be like a feature set defined for a period of time, and then we'll produce that, and then release that. And everyone works closely together. Yeah. It's kind of agile in the generic sense, and it's probably agile in the definition of agile software development sense, but that's more complicated. So the app. If anyone's got any questions, anyway through, just jump in, butt in, or whatever. So we talk about apps a little bit here. I don't know, everyone takes them for granted, but usually there's a front end, which is the app. There's a bit in the middle, which is generally an API or a set of APIs, often dozens of APIs, to be honest. And then we've got the back end. Obviously, not all apps have backends. Like for example, Flappy Bird probably doesn't have a back end, or trivial games, but nearly everything has a back end. So and I'm not really sure what other people particularly use for backends, but you kind of need a database or a data container with an API stuck on the front of it, and then some sort of interface to allow people to put the data in. So this analogy of a cow is in both senses of the word inappropriate, because but technically you would also put things into the back end. So you probably need a cow with 2 heads, otherwise it just looks wrong. But that would look even more wrong. So go with that. I'm vegetarian, so I don't know much about cows. So the app is not dramatically complicated or sophisticated. We worked on the basis of a minimum viable product and then evolving, quickly over time. All new features going to all existing apps, so there's not a legacy baggage, I guess. So the apps they have like information screens and news and their forms and surveys. I don't know whether. I think it's like a general school thing. You end up with bits of paper saying, "I agree." Do you sign that Bob can have his photo taken, or can Sally go on the trip to the museum, or this sort of thing? And you end up with those things. So it's an interesting. So that's a positive use case for the schools in terms of saving time and effort. Have events and calendars. And other categories of information, whether it's like soccer club or football club, or like hockey or computer club, and all the apps are like iOS and Android, tablet and phones, cover all the major bases. And it's got to be useful. That bit where you do a presentation, you're like, there must be an XKCD about that, sort of thing. So and it was so it's good. This one, well, both these were kind of covered in the keynote on Friday. So being useful. You'd think being useful would be a prerequisite to any software development, but it's not always the case. I always find this one particularly annoying. The Daily Mail website does that. I read that very much. And loads of other ones. So quickly talk through how the app works, or how it looks at least, or the apps. There's a sort of traditional sort of home screen. It's just a common UI device, and some schools have 6 tiles on the home screen, and some have 9. But I think we're going to evolve this over time. And there's brand, everything's branded. Anyone? Get a point for anyone who knows where Hill Valley School is, by the way. No?
Hill Valley?
Oh, what?
Is that a real school or is that a fake school?
It's a kind of a real school. I don't know. That's the one. Yeah, nice one. Headmaster Strickland. Good work. It's kind of real. I don't know. So this is one of our. It's a demo app that we have on the App Store. So it's news like this.
So I can download this.
Yeah. I'll publish some links at the end of the. There's 2 demo apps. One is they don't. Play Store they don't care about anything, but iTunes they're a bit fussy. Oh, just a bit fussy. They don't really let you have demo apps on iTunes. It's in the T's and C's, but you can have like proof of concept apps. If you call it a proof of concept app, then they accept it to the App Store. But so there's 2. There's one which is this one is like an example for school, and there's another one which is an example for a nursery. So, they're both good. I'll publish a bunch of links at the end as well. Or like tweet a list of links, references. So you got like a news screen, so like a blog view, I guess, Well, it is a blog view actually. And we've click on a news item, you get a detail. You got an event screen. Events is tricky because all phones have their own kind of event system in them already, whether it's Google Calendar or iCal. I don't know what it's called. So the idea is rather than duplicate the calendar in your phone, you just end up with like an add to calendar button sort of thing. Different schools want to use it different ways. What else do we have? Information. So this is kind of like a staticky sort of content, as opposed to linear news, chronologically linear news category. And we've got you click on an item, you get a big one, sort of thing. And there's a contact screen. You can have as many contacts as you like, and maps and stuff. And it looks the same on iOS, and these screen dumps are obviously from Android, but it looks kind of exactly the same on iOS as it does on Android. Well, although all the apps look different because they're all branded and themed to the school. So some are like, orange on white, and some are white on black, and some are blue on white, and some are white on red and stuff, the logos and stuff. Yeah, so, I don't know, push notifications, I don't know whether, it's like one of those things, the things that pop up on your phone from Facebook or whatever, so that's so the things like, if the school's closed for the day, they can send a push notification to all the parents to say, school closed, it's flooded, go home. So the schools see that as an important thing, and you can send push notifications with a contextual content. So you can create a new form, and you can tick the box saying send notification, and it'll send a notification saying please fill out the Florence Nightingale Museum trip form, and you click open, and it opens a form, and you fill out the form. I don't know.
Can you do groups? So
yeah.
So I would have to send it to this grade, but not that grade.
So in the existing version, so probably started about 6 to 8 months ago. You can set up channels. They call So you can create channels within the backend, and then when you're sending notifications, you can choose which channel receives which channel or channels receives a notification. And in the app, you can subscribe to individual channels. So you might have like a year 1 channel and a year 2 channel, and you might have like a football club channel or this sort of thing.
You could even have a channel on a class level.
Yeah, exactly.
We have the class level, the people has to register as well. They need to subscribe to the channel. Okay.
Yeah, but by default, everyone's subscribed to the Everyone channel. So yeah. There's different like UI analogies that people, processes people use. Some people you install the app and then it throws up a configuration screen and you're like, you have to choose, but we've not gone for that because, just, it can put people off, it's adding layers and barriers and stuff. Over time there'll be evolve it more. So I don't know, within the English state school sector, the majority of schools use a really rubbish internal application called Sims, which was created by a local education authority, and is now sold now by Capita in the UK. So that manages their pupil information. So over time we'll evolve it so that you can import the data from the Sims system, and then the app will know who all the kids are and then which devices belong to. We can already authenticate devices against children at the moment, So and then you'd be able to say, it'll be a more practical sense of send this to everyone in year 2 or send this to everyone in, Squirrel's class or whatever. But so what else we got? There's a menu, slides outside, normal stuff. Very standard UI paradigms. On the forms are like this sort of thing, and it all uses it's all like native widgets, native UI elements sort of thing. So everything's familiar toggles and stuff. Like the iOS toggles, you get a little round one, and the Android ones, you get a little square one. It's much. Yeah. Forms and surveys are kind of the same thing, but the surveys, about asking people for their opinion, whereas a form is about providing data. But, functionally the same.
Question. How do you know it's correct when the kid sends me the message?
How do you know it's I always think about this because when I was a kid, I used to sign my own forms with my dad's signature.
Make it easier.
Yeah, and it's and then the notification that you got a detention because you didn't do your set fire to the toilets or something like this, But no, there's no way. That's the same. It's me signing my dad's signature 30 years ago. It's like, yeah.
I assume there is a history of sent reports or messages, right?
Yeah,
so a parent can see that the child has sent in his name the absence report.
Yeah. Wee Bobby's going to be away today. Hopefully. Yeah, it's when the parent goes home for lunch and they find out, what are you doing? It's like, and how come there's no beer in the fridge anymore? But you know, I think initially we're mainly targeting primary schools, so it's like children under 12, so it's not too bad a problem, I guess. It's under 11, yeah, you know. Or at least the beer thing, anyway. You know. So yeah, so we're talking about, I don't know. Has anyone got any queries about the app? The general principles of it. Hey. Yeah. So yeah, making apps is it's difficult to know what to cover because it's like everyone's Joomla people, but you know, so we'll cover some of the app stuff anyway because it's kind of interesting from a development point of view. Yeah. So it's a weird, strange thing when you have meetings with app developers. You sit down and it's like you know, like 4 of you, and you like everyone spends well, not everyone because I'm not an app developer, but most everyone else spends the first 5 minutes taking phones out of their pockets, and you sit there and you're like, there's nowhere to put your coffee because there's like 20 phones on the table, and everyone, it just looks like a meeting of like drug dealers or gangsters or something. It's just weird. I don't know. But so how to make apps, you know? Does anyone do app development here? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, cool. So there's different ways, you know. So you can make a native app. You can write in Objective-C or Java. And you'd have to, you know, do one per platform. You can do web apps, you know, which is, you know, kind of works okay. Or you can do hybrid apps, which is a choice that was taken with this project. So basically, yeah, the idea with hybrid apps is you write it once in one common high-level language typically, and a platform, a system compiles and converts it into like native, either native code and compiles it, or just compiles it directly into you know, whether it's Java or Objective-C or Swift, and you know, and often these ones they compile. They all do Android and iOS, but often a lot of them do Windows Phone and BlackBerry and Shenzhen, yeah, as well, sort of thing. So it's a good route in a sense because it means you can have a common code base and these nice things. So yeah, probably the most popular one or commonly used one is PhoneGap. Oh, it's nice. It's a little bit lightweight in some respects. And Appcelerator Titanium is a common one. So PhoneGap and Appcelerator, they're just, you basically write mostly in JavaScript. So if you're a web developer or a front-end developer, it's you know, it's familiar. I can never remember which one. It's like Sensor Touch. I think you write in. Is that JavaScript? Yeah. One of them you write in .NET, which is really bizarre. Maybe that's. Xamarin, yeah. And Corona. So this is. But we chose the Appcelerator today because yeah, it's probably, you know, for the sort of corporate, you know, large corporate market. It's probably like the prevalent platform, I guess. People like McDonald's or, you know, Thomas Cook First Choice, they use it. Starbucks, yeah, Starbucks, yeah. So, but PhoneGap is probably the best one if you're like, you know, just start, you know, it's your initial forays and you're as an individual doing app development, I guess. Yeah, you need to build it on a Mac sort of thing. But yeah, it's a really nice tool set, you know. Yeah, it's quite complicated setup. Yeah, this is you should really know most of them. Well, PhoneGap and Appcelerator and Corona are all open source. But you know, it's not like, you know, it's a bugbear of mine. It's not like proper open source. It's more like open source with a corporate, you know, a corporate monster or benefactor, or you know. So for example, Appcelerator. Yeah, I mean they're quite pro open source and. You know, and whenever everything's open source, but they have a platform and you can buy the platform. And it's like, you buy the platform, then it provides you with APIs that you can use, say, for example, to send push messaging and this sort of thing. And they have like a cloud building sort of service too. They just changed their pricing structure actually. It went from, they used to have a really good tranche of licensing for, you know, like independent developers. But they just took that away, so it's now much more expensive than it used to. I think they'll be okay. You know, you look at these companies and you think, oh, shit, is it going to be there in 5 years' time? And you're like, I think, you know, I think you can imagine there's probably some consolidation that's going to happen here. It's natural evolution, but maybe two, you know, in a couple of years' time, there'll be like 2 or 3 of these will be the dominant, you know, dominant platforms, I guess. Yeah. So with Appcelerator, you write your logic in JavaScript. It's nice. It's normal. You do the layout in Alloy, which is their own Appcelerator's own language, but it's really just like HTML or XML sort of structure-wise, and then you do all the styling in TSS, which is basically a derivative of CSS. So when you look at it, you're like, oh, it's an app, and you look at it, and you go, oh, it's just a bunch of code. It looks like not too scary. And and there's lots of open source modules that you can use, and you know, different modules you can include in your projects, and they compile into native code in different ways and stuff. There's a lot of variation in the quality of you know, code and sort of modules out there. Sort of thing. But I don't know. It's got lots of good APIs, and the community is pretty good. It's not like, you know, it's that bit where you can tell how widely used, how widely adopted or mature a platform is by if you Google a question, you find more answers than questions. With Appcelerator, you still find more questions than answers, you know, in their equivalent of Stack Overflow. But at least people are asking. So. So it's open source with like a corporate overlord, and the corporate overlord provides the cloud service infrastructure in the cloud. Apps. Yeah. So one of the things with this is, you know, the idea is to hit, you know, in an internal cost per app of being exceptionally low, and without that, it's just not viable really, because you can't sell the app for a few hundred quid if it costs you like, you know, 2 weeks. It took you 2 weeks to make it. So everything's done. It's interesting because it's kind of a different sort of like all the looking at the automated testing talks earlier last couple of days, and everything's done in PHP as the scripting language, but here we're using JavaScript as the scripting language. I don't know, scripting language is just like, doesn't really matter in a sense, you know. It's, you know, like it'd be like 20 years ago writing things in Perl, and then you go for writing them in Bash, and then you start writing them in TCL because it's cross-platform, and then you start writing them in PHP because that's like the language used for everything, and then everyone else starts writing them in JavaScript, so you have to write them in JavaScript. But it all does the same thing anyway. So it uses Node.js basically to run scripts, and Grunt.js is like a task runner, like kind of like Robo for PHP, and Calabash is like an integrated test, automated test environment. So it's nice in a way. So it's kind of like you sort of point it to your Android and your iOS emulators, and it goes and, you know, like a Selenium would do in a browser. It goes and clicks these things in, you know, for example, on Android, it would be in the Genymotion emulator, and it would test everything. So you commit a bit of code, and it still works, and commit a bit. So it's hard. You know, you find out soon if you break something. And then this runs under this Go continuous delivery server. So basically, it's like the Go server is just kind of a web interface where you just get a bunch of like green lights when this thing, you know. So the Go server initiates all the tasks and then collects returns from the tasks, and you can see the progress of your continuous delivery, continuous integration efforts. And there's a Dutch guy. He lives in Lancaster. He's developed these tools called CrowsFX. It's like automation tools for app stores. You know, like taking photo. You know, you have to take screen. You have to when you submit your app, you have to submit it with screen dumps of every in different form factors. That automates that, and delivery to app stores too. We also use Phantom.js as a for automating things that don't have APIs or interfaces. So this looks like this. You've got a Go server, and there's Grunt.js runs the task server, and then, it kicks off a Go server agent, pulls the code out of Git, and then it sets a bunch of options, pulls in the theme for that particular school, compiles it in Java, Xcode, runs the calabash testing, and sets up the certificates. There's a lot of messing around with certificates with apps, and then delivers it to either iTunes or Google Play Store. So it's quite quick, mostly. Angus, the boss, has got a Mac, one of those Mac Pros that looks like a bin, with like 32 gig of RAM in it. So it runs okay, but to do like 40 apps, it takes all day, I guess. Yeah. Has anyone got any questions about the build process? It's kind of epically complicated, but it's kind of a high level.
By times X apps, you mean for every school you build the app for?
Yeah. Okay. Times 2 platforms. It runs a lot. But it's the problem. The problem is what you'd really want to do is you'd want to run it like in a data center, like but because you've got to run it on a Mac to compile the Xcode. It's really and that you can't get Mac that Apple don't make servers anymore. Well, except for it's like a Mac Mini server maybe, but
is the app for school so different that you couldn't handle it with just one app? And in the backend you would store some like this school's got this view, layout,
this is a different approach. And there's another company, what are they called, Scoop in the UK, which take this approach. Where basically, when you launch the app, the first time it asks you what your school is, and it downloads a JSON that's got your theme in it. But there was it seemed like there was a feeling in the marketplace. That's an equally valid approach, totally. But there was a feeling in the marketplace that people wanted their own app, rather than,
and that name in the App Store.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why. All the apps are free. So it's more. I don't know whether that's more of a branding decision on the part of the schools. But schools. I don't know in the UK, probably everywhere, I guess. Right. Worried about things like privacy and security and these things that people worry about when there's children involved, which is totally, So I think these things is like this nuanced requirement that they have, which they sort of translate to you in different ways, whether it's like, the backend's only accessible via, like SSL, HTTPS, whatever. So it's like, and that just makes them feel better about it, even though they're using it in the school, like on the computer in the school office. These things, it's like, things to make people feel better about things. It's like humans, I guess. So this is the back end, which is probably the more interesting bit for us. It's more attractive than this one. So what does the back end do? In practice, it just allows the users, the schools, to enter content, and enter events, and basically put all the stuff that comes out on the phone. They just put it in there. So whether it's like ICS feeds for calendars, because all the schools seem to have their own calendar systems anyway. Whether it's Google Calendar or some sort of iCal or some crazy Microsoft Exchange calendar. So they just put in their feed URLs. Although the app, the backend does its own event system too. We kept it quite light because they don't really. J events would be too heavy for them really. And they set up the forms and surveys and send out push messages. And they, like all the normal things like access control. Oh, and survey data and form data they have too. So, so we chose Joomla, of course. That was okay.
Why of course?
Well, I don't know. I had a practice of this presentation, because I was reading Brian's thing. It said like practice your presentation in front of other people. So I did it at the local tech meetup in Aberdeen, and it's like a meeting of half of it's like students, but it's like but in that one I didn't have the of course at the bottom. So I don't know. Yeah, of course because I like Joomla and it works really well. It's awesome. Yeah, you could use other things. Yeah, I was reading a thing about the other day about somebody, an app that used Google Docs spreadsheets as the back end. So you just put everything in Google. They have like a Google Docs form, and it's like, I don't know, it's all very googly. So why Joomla? Yeah, so it's stable, secure, it's mobile friendly. So you can imagine if a teacher's on a school trip, they can log into the back end on their phone and they can publish a push message to say the bus is going to be late. And well, everyone who's got the app in. And it's great to develop on, obviously, NPC, all these lovely things. And to be honest, this is the main thing. It's like, why would you write something when you have, like all the bricks and mortar, like user access content? It's like it's almost made for this purpose. Or it's not obviously. It works really well. Yeah. It was interesting when Chris talked the other day about APIs in Joomla 3.6 was so that'll be an interesting progression.
Sorry, every app has its own Joomla backend.
Yeah.
It's not the same server that collects, but each app has its own school. Each school has its own.
Yeah. App and schools kind of interchangeable. Yeah. It's there's a Joomla instance for each one. Yeah. So they're all like, but they're all pretty much identical. So yeah, it's an interesting. I really wanted to see the SiteGround talk, but it was one of those ones that was two on at the same time. To see how with the Joomla.com how they. I'll have to watch the video afterwards.
It's a modified version. I was there. It's a modified version, and you can actually build something like that.
Yeah. I was thinking whether or not you could have it, just like one code set with symbolic links to all the folders within, and each one, the only thing that's different is the images folder and the config.php and yeah.
So this is actually easier to scale. I mean, if you think about it, it's easier to scale because one big application, one database, and it's stuck on the one server.
Yeah.
Cloud is stuck on the one server because of the database. This you can put on 20 servers.
And some of the schools, they say they want to host it internally.
Exactly.
Which is ridiculous because why would you take it off and put it in your office? It's like latency would be learning. It's more and it's more robust. You can't. Well, you could break all the schools at once, but that would be difficult. But be an achievement. But yeah. So what we do is we use the Joomla front end. So they log into the Joomla front end. They don't touch the Joomla back end at all. So we can you can just show them the interface that's relevant to them, to the users themselves. So this is it. So each app has its own Joomla back end. And we did a custom template that's quite flexible. So basically, when they log into the back end, it looks the same as the app. It's all branded, colors the same. So there's a nice continuity. It looks posh, I guess. So we use this is fallen off the bottom. We just use two extensions really. And three if you count the keep it backup, but you just use it everywhere, so it's matter. So we use FieldsAttatch for structured data, and an extension called, you can't see it, it's just gone off the bottom, sorry about that, called jBackend, which provides a RESTful API interface for Joomla. But I'll expand on that. Generally the approach is like the approach we use for everything mostly, I suppose, is to use as much core functionality as possible, use the bare minimum number of extensions, and make everything adaptable and responsive. So the idea was a lot of the choices in development are really focused on continuous integration and continuous delivery. So that's really influenced a lot of choices in terms of keeping the complexity low and dependencies, keeping the number of dependencies down as well. Sort of thing. But also the idea you could run it just it's kind of standard Joomla. You can run it on a like commodity hosting. We ran it on commodity hosting for the first 6 months, and that was fine.
Yeah. What do you use for security, like application authorization? Do you use Auth2 or some other?
In the backend.
For the mobile, to push notifications and to receive notifications, you need to have a token-based notification or a basic one or something else.
Yeah.
So do you know what you use?
Yeah. So this is one of the good things about using like an like a service-based system like Appcelerator is so they provide all that. They've got there's like a push API. So if you didn't use one of those, you'd have to push things separately to iOS and Android devices. So they manage the authentication between them. Oh, okay, yeah.
So you have to log in properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just
to get the data out. It's probably not all public, and it's probably protected where you're trying to push.
Mm-hmm.
And the right user, the right privileges have to be set.
Yeah.
Do you use something for authorization?
No, it's just like normal Joomla login for admin.
So it's basic.
Yeah. I think we did think about. I mean, it all defaults to HTTPS, So we did think about using like a two-factor authentication, but it's the difficult one because the user base, in terms of people using it in the school, they're not exceptionally IT literate, and conservative in terms of adopting new systems. Talking maybe like typically administrators working in the office. They've worked in the same school office using spreadsheets for the last 20 years or whatever. But, that sort of thing. So there's a balance between simplicity, user interface simplicity and security. It's hard to.
Yeah, I'm thankful that teams. So I know that there is a couple of problems. For example, you change passwords for the user that the mobile app is using, and then you have to update the app because it's not perfect anymore. You cannot push or send or receive anything.
Yeah. But there's no password in the app at all. Although the app does authenticate itself against a Joomla user when the app connects to the backend. That's probably a man. Or maybe cover some of that later if we've got time. So the backend looks like this. They've got like a home screen dashboard which has like it publishes results from their surveys, that come back, and you can get analytics from apps, so this is like the number of people who used it per day, I guess, and then you can see like different categories, whether it's like news and information and events and messages, it's a push system, and forms, and so you can see this continuity of branding between this and the app.
Is the custom backend on the front end of the Joomla?
Yeah, it's complicated. But so they never see the /administrator. So it's like it's the back end of the app is the front end of Joomla or something. It's like so when you have a call, you're on a conference call, and then the boss, he's like, the boss says, "Oh, we need to fix the back end." And it's like, does he mean that back end or that back end or that back end? Shit. So there's like, you publish news items like this. It's all familiar. This is just a content category list. We have to implement this reordering. At the moment, you only get that in Joomla backend, so we have to put that in front end too. And that just hits a Ajax plugin to set the orders. You can create new news items. So this is what I was saying. So basically, if you create any item of content, you can choose that it's a notification, and you can choose when your notification is sent. So you can have it sent at 9 o'clock the next day. You can choose the notification group that receives that notification. Yeah. So it's nice. It's like a kind of like a holistic. Any content can be a notification sort of approach. We have like you can see when people reply to forms. It displays the results in a table and a graph. If it's so if it's if the form that the box on the form uses like a there's a multiple choice thing and it shows a graph.
So about the forms, are they able to create the custom forms, or you create custom forms for them and they use it?
Yeah, no.
In the school, that would be too complicated for the school to create the custom.
No, yeah, they create the forms themselves. Yeah, we've got like I don't know. I maybe don't have a screen for this, but no, I don't.
The forms are always challenging for them.
Yeah, but we kept the the number of choices down. So they only have only have like 12, maximum of 12 questions, and then they can either have like a text box or a big text box, which is or a selection or a toggle, yes, no, so it's hard to make it simple, but I think we've nailed it, and if you add a field, then it adds a box, and then you add a field, it adds a box. So basically, you don't see, we're trying to hide the complexity. Oh yeah, for all these for these data which augments the Joomla content structure, we use FieldsAttatch. So, say for example, this decision is. So all articles would have. Has anyone used FieldsAttatch before? Okay, it's like it's a very light CCK. It's not a CCK. It's a CCK. CCK. Basically, it allows you to add. You can add you create groups of fields, and then you apply groups of fields to categories, one or more categories. So, say for example, you can have but it's just within Joomla. So you just end up when you're editing content, you just have another tab for each. Yeah, it's nice. It's really the code's it's nice. Yeah, really nice.
So how this works when you actually have a submission to the form? Because one way you can share to the user, but then you have to keep submission to.
Yeah. So the phone caches it in a local MySQL database, and then when it's online, if it's not online, it sends the data back to the API. There's a backend API, and then that stores it in a form submission table. Yeah. So it's like So all these fields here are all fields in FieldsAttatch. So whether or not there's a notification, the data notification. So different categories have different attached fields. Say for example, an article in the event category has like a start date time and an end date time field, and this sort of thing. Notification log. So this tells you how many people. If you send a message, it says, 52 people received this message. 28%, 28 of them were Android, 24 of them were iOS. You get that from the messaging API. And you can see, this is not such a great example because these ones are all sent to all users, but it would show that if you'd send it to just class 1, it would just say class 1. Over time, we should be able to get to a point where if the backend has a list of pupils, then you'd be able to see, if a parent or guardian of this pupil received this notification. So within the school, they would be able to look at the backend and say, well, these people haven't replied to the form, we need to give them a bit of paper. But smartphone penetration, like the parental demographic is, 18 to 40 anyway, sort of thing, just about. So, or 18 to 40, 18 to 50. So the smartphone demographic penetration in that demographic is quite high. So, I'm just looking at a couple of the wee details of the features of the app. So, the push notifications, so we mentioned this a bit already. So basically, any item can be a push notification, and they get sent by the Appcelerator API cloud, which is nice. It's just a JSON. You just send them a bit of JSON, authenticate your credentials, and then send them the JSON. So it just runs as a cron job every 2 minutes, going through all the backends and sending out all the messages in the queue. So you never really have to wait long. It's all custom code. It just sits. There's a folder in the Joomla install called cron tasks.
So the cron job actually submits the message to the Appcelerator API.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then it records that it's been sent. It's quite quick. They both sit in the same data. Well, they're both in London. So, yeah, and it works on an Apple. This is Angus. Angus's iWatch. It works on an iWatch. Not very exciting. I should have an Android Wear watch as well equality, but it's not very exciting. Hey, I always talk too fast, so I was thinking like, of course. So fields attached. I'll just rattle on a bit. So I think so. So fields attached. You know this thing where you have a website and they have a picture of the product on the page, and you don't get it in a box. You just download it. It's nice. It's all UI driven. Christian is in Barcelona. He's the developer for it. It's written in Spanish, which is good because it means you have to learn a bit of Spanish. Read the variable names, and you sit there. What's that? You know, like that's cool. You know, too much code's written in English anyway. So, it's fine. I've been using fields attached for maybe 3 or 4 years for everything, for like tractor stock control databases to like. Everything really. I kind of stopped using K2 and switched to using fields attached just because it's lighter, easier. So we use this extension. The two extensions we use is fields attached and jBackend. So jBackend, it provides an API interface for Joomla. It's nice. It's written for developers really. It's a good starting point though if you wanted to hook an app onto your Joomla install. So it manages all these like mundane things like API keys between the app and the backend, that sort. And they give you a few different boilerplate, basically bits of boilerplate code that you can build on. There's one for article data, and one for menus, and one for users. So we never used to use it when we wrote it. It's nice. I think it does XML, but mostly we use JSON.
Did you consider? Did you have a look at other solutions? For example, like the slip frame?
No. This choice was actually made just before I joined the project, but I've been completely happy with it the whole time. So it's not, it's really well. But you don't, in a sense, you could just write your own, like Ajax plugin for Joomla anyway, and do the same thing. It wouldn't be a big, if we didn't do that, that's probably what we would have done. The only thing is you'd have to do the API keys. It's nice having a GUI in the back end, copying and pasting your API keys. So I want to touch on some of this like CI and CD DevOps stuff. So because it's really a key to the project in a way. So all the apps have the same code base. They're all built out the same Git repository, and it brings in a different. So it's really important for the. Basically for the project working, I guess, So it's different. So basically, it pulls the code from GitHub, it builds it with the theme, and then it runs this. We sort of touched on that in the diagram earlier. And we use this Phantom JS for pretending to be a person. Like a lot of the app stores, well, particularly Apple, the iTunes, it's not really set up. It's deliberately set up so you can't automate it because they don't want people to. Spam submissions and stuff. So you've got to do a good bit of work there. But once it's set up, it works. So initially we had it running on Rocken shared hosting, and now we moved to a Rocken managed cloud. I'm not such a big fan of that, to be honest. I'd rather it was like a real virtual machine. But we use Unity, which is completely awesome. In terms of, you said that bit where you sit and you watch Kickstart running through so many times, but you could just, if you run Unity, it takes like a second, and you're like, oh, it's like, at first you're like, oh, that must have not worked because it was too quick, and you're like, oh, and you've got your Joomla installed to it. So basically, you just pass an XML file, and it creates a backend from an Akiba, like a seed, JPA file. Lessons. This is important. So what did we learn from? Automation, essential. iTunes submissions, pain in the ass. Android fragmentation, doesn't really matter. And app stores don't want you to automate stuff. I'll just breeze through these bits. But ask any questions this time. From the back end, I think, it's good to develop, with simplicity and with a future in mind. So we're iterating quickly, and we try not to accumulate technical debt. So it's like if you have like a 2-week code sprint every month, then you end up doing things quickly, and the technical debt will just kill you over time. So, yeah, APIs are great. It's nice writing APIs too, to be honest. And so we script everything in JavaScript, just because all the app developers speak JavaScript and everything runs JavaScript. Some commercial lessons. This is not my field so much, but schools that start making decisions. Not as bad as hospitals, but nearly as good. And there's lots of scope for growth, and it's basically a really good idea. From a commercial point of view. And this is a really thing that's interesting to me. It's different schools have different, gain value from it in different ways. So, if it's some schools, if it's in wealthy area, they're they look fancy because they've got an app, And other schools, they have low attendance because they're in a less prosperous area, and they're using it to drive pupil engagement, and they have specific targets to meet for pupil engagement. So there's different value propositions for different markets. Oh yeah. So any question? If you would like to come and try out the app or the backend, come and catch us. I've got 20 apps on the phone, and you can play. There's a demo backend I can let you have a look at too. Thanks.